Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. At least 4 killed in the last 24 hours. Search still on for police trainee believed to have drowned in Treasure Beach, St. Elizabeth. And later in sports, Shelley and Fraser Price to run 100 meters on Thursday in Switzerland. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shamela Pullen. Here are the details. At least 4 people have been shot and killed in the last 24 hours. One of the incidents involved a mother and her son in St. Catherine Monday night. Kirk Wright reports.
The first incident occurred along the Red Ground Main Road about 7 p.m. on Monday. The deceased have been identified as Richard Mosley and Shane Granson, both of Red Ground in Negril. According to reports, a police officer assigned to specialized operations were on mobile patrol duties in Negril when they received information that armed men were traveling in a white Toyota motorcar. The motorcar was subsequently seen along a section of the Red Ground Main Road and was thereafter signaled to stop by the police. However, the driver refused. The police say they later intercepted the motorcar, but men inside fired at them and they fired back. They say when the shooting subsided, 2 men were seen suffering from gunshot wounds. They were rushed to hospital where they were pronounced dead. The police say Richard was out on bail for illegal possession of a firearm. Indicom is investigating the incident. Meanwhile, over in St. Catherine, a woman and her son were shot dead in Spanish Town last night. The victims have been identified as 21-year-old bus conductor Jerome Walters and his mother, 50-year-old Georgia Coleman, a businesswoman and operator of Georgia One Stop on St. John's Road. Investigators reported that about 7:45, Miss Coleman and her son were at the shop when 2 men drove up on a motorcycle and opened fire at them. Both were shot and taken to hospital where they were pronounced dead. Kirk Wright, TVJ News.
The search is still on for Jamaica Constabulary Force trainee. It's believed the trainee drowned after being swept away at Tranquility Bay in Treasure Beach, St. Elizabeth Monday morning. It's understood that the heavy current is making it difficult for search teams. Consumer confidence continued its downward trajectory for the second quarter of the year, according to Executive Chairman of Market Research Limited, Don Anderson. There was a 2% drop. He says while the decline is of concern, there is still a glimmer of hope.
Like a period of stabilization of consumer confidence over the last couple of quarters, consequent on the relaxation of certain COVID restrictions, which were in place for the last 2 years from, say, early 2020 through to the middle of 2022. So this 2% fall off, we consider to be a relatively small dip in consumer confidence, but it is something to watch over the next quarters. We should note that consumer confidence is, however, marginally better than it was in the second quarter of 2022.
On the business side, Mr. Anderson says confidence was relatively flat, with less than 1% improvement in confidence for the second quarter.
If we look back to 2019, where that index was 151, again, consistent with consumer fall off in confidence, we see a dramatic fall off in business confidence consequent on COVID. There's no question that this is a direct contributor factor, direct driver of the fall off in business confidence. It picked up substantially in the last 2 quarters of 2022. Substantially because, as we made the point a quarter ago, there were significant expectations coming out of the opening up of the economy in the second quarter of 2022. Plans being made for the third quarter and fourth quarter Christmas period of 2022. And there was therefore an expectation that this would continue.
A new entertainment hip strip could be coming to the corporate area soon. The details were outlined by Prime Minister Andrew Holness while commissioning a concrete pathway in West Central St. Andrew. O'Shane Masters reports.
Entering and exiting the compound community in Olympic Gardens is now easier, thanks to this concrete pathway built by Cimex Limited. The piece of infrastructure takes the community a step closer to shaking off the vestiges of being an informal settlement, and for Prime Minister Andrew Holness, a lot of credit must go to the citizens.
They have transformed the wooden structures into concrete structures. And if our cameras were able to look behind us, and I'm certain if we were to do a tour today, you would see that almost 90% of the structures here are concrete structures.
He added the project ties in with the government's efforts to transform infrastructure in many corporate area inner city communities.
So as you go along Roden Crescent and on Olympic Way, you will realize that you could count the number of zinc fences on both hands, or probably on one hand. On one hand. So we have taken down the zinc fences.
The Prime Minister also indicated he will pump more state resources into the area in order to increase entertainment offerings in the city at night.
We spent quite a bit of resources in developing the hip strip along Olympic Way. I am told that the young men in the area would like to have a similar investment made to create a hip strip in Roden Crescent to compete with the hip strip on Olympic Way. I'm all for that. I am all for making investments where our young people will be able to use their creativity, use up their enterprise, and earn their resources lawfully.
The investments would include the installation of lights, benches, and cameras to aid with security.
Once people know that you can be safe in the area, more people are going to come to your party. More people are going to come to your dance. Security is the basis of all economic success. So the cameras will be positioned in such a way that they don't invade your privacy, but they will enhance.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, in St. James, renewed calls for an entertainment zone to be established as promoters are losing thousands of dollars due to limited granting of entertainment permits by police, especially during states of public emergency. Kirkwright reports.
Party promoters in St. James have been reeling under the crunch of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, as despite spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, they're yet to receive the required entertainment approvals. They're particularly concerned about the turnaround time after applying, which they deem as poor. Commanding officer for the parish, Senior Superintendent Vernon Ellis, however, says the process of granting a permit can be tedious, especially when considering the many factors before a permit can be granted. Like the location of the event, the police have to consider whether it's high risk to minimize incidents of gun attacks. He was responding to questions brought by counsel for the Montego Bay East Division, Charles Sinclair. As for receiving approvals from the police in the parish,
I think we should tidy up some of these archaic ways in which we do these applications, get them electronic, get people responding to them electronic. Somebody sends you a paper application and come to you for a paper response. They could know in the touch of a button that based on what's happening, a generic response will tell you not to go ahead and do this investment at that time.
but Councillor Sinclair says, based on feedback from some of his constituents, there seems to be some bias in how permits are granted in the parish.
There is a particular location that there have been some adverse comments that have been made about that location, but that location is still facilitated in conducting their activity. So it comes across in a little that there's some amount of bias in how things are being allowed. I won't ask of you publicly the specific location that you alluded to. We can have an outside conversation and then bring some further clarity.
In the meantime, another call for the establishment of an entertainment zone in the parish.
We can have these events thrown all over the place, inside of the middle of some battle zones and places where everybody wants to be going at each other. You create a gathering there. It's an opportunity you're creating for people to get at each other.
Kirk Wright, TVJ News.
It's time for a break. Stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. It's now time for the Business Minute.
The NCB Financial Group announced that effective today, Patrick Hilton and Dennis Cohen will begin vacation leave for 3 weeks. In a release, the bank stated that during the period, arrangements will be made for their roles to be carried out on an interim and then permanent basis. Chairman of NCB Financial Group, Michael Lee Chin, will carry some executive responsibilities. NCB said it appreciated the service of Mr. Hilton and Mr. Cohen over the past 20 and 19 years respectively. A new leadership team has been put in place. It comprises Mr. Septimus Barber Blake, Chief Executive Officer of National Commercial Bank Jamaica Limited, who also oversees NCBJ's subsidiaries, Mr. Ian Chinapool, Group Chief Executive Officer of Guardian Holdings Limited, and Mr. Ian Truran, Chief Executive Officer of Clarion Bank Limited. On the international scene, U.S. President Joe Biden is beating his rivals in fundraising for the 2024 election. His campaign says he raised $72 million in the first quarter since launching his re-election bid. That's for his own candidacy and the Democratic Party in general. By comparison, former President Donald Trump's campaign says he brought in more than $35 million in his second quarter. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' campaign says he raised $20 million in just over 6 weeks on the campaign trail. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Shane Masters.
Time now for the top regional and international stories.
In the region, the government of Guyana said arrangements have begun for the relatives of the 19 children who died as a result of the May Madia Secondary School dormitory fire to be compensated for their loss. TVJ News understands that each family will receive $5 million in financial assistance. The country's Ministry of Legal Affairs, in a statement yesterday, said the families were requested to sign an agreement having received independent legal advice. On the international scene, Russia launched missile and drone strikes on southern and eastern Ukraine last night, damaging infrastructure in the Black Sea of Port Odessa. The attack on Odessa, one of Ukraine's main ports for exporting grain, followed a pledge of retaliation by Russia after yesterday's attack on the Crimea Bridge. The port strike also follows Moscow's withdrawal from a year-old UN-brokered grain export deal, a move the United Nations said risked creating hunger around the world. And a judge in Iowa has put a hold on the state's new 6-week abortion ban just days after it became law. On Friday, Governor Kim Reynolds signed the bill banning abortions in Iowa after a heartbeat is detected, which usually happens around 6 weeks. The judge is now granting a temporary injunction allowing abortion up to 20 weeks after providers argued the new law was unconstitutional. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Raquel Porto.
We head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll have your midday sports report with Jermaine Brown.